Hello and welcome back to episode 3 of the Liminars League podcast. I'm your host, Hal Greenblatt, and as always, producing the show is my buddy Austin Needs. As we continue our journey looking at learning about athletes in transition, today we welcome Reggie Berry. Reggie grew up in Houston, Texas, where he spent his formative years sampling a variety of sports, but ultimately focusing on basketball. Reggie committed to Western Michigan University, and by his senior year, he was one of the top 6 men in the NCAA, and he was named 6th Man of the Year in the MAC Conference. Following college is where Reggie's life really, truly began, and his transition from competitive sport started, then stopped, and then started again. With that, I want to welcome Reggie Berry. Reg, I appreciate you joining us today and telling us your story.
No problem.
Let's
Thanks,
get
man.
into
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I mean, we appreciate it, Reg. I know how busy you are, so let's dig into it. Let's tell us a little about your youth growing up in Houston, Texas.
Yeah. So my parents were educators. My father, God rest his soul, we kind of just followed his lead. While I was in high school, my dad actually went back to get his doctorate, and subsequently just kind of kept matriculating through the system, looking to be a president of a university one day. So as luck would have it, our travels took us to Houston early on in my childhood. And that was where we spent the majority of our time. So for me, I grew up with a lot of high level athletes. You don't know at the time, but, some of my friends turned out to be All-Americans in their respective sports, Olympians, professionals. So I had to find my niche in my little group of friends. And, quite naturally, basketball was, we call it the family business. It's something that, I've been drawn to since I can remember. And, I picked it up and I dedicated tons and tons of time to that. And before you knew it, I was one of the better players in my area and in the state. So it worked out for me.
Now, you grew up with a lot of high-level athletes, like you said. So I'm guessing you did a lot of sampling before really deciding basketball was it for you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say a lot. Football, to be honest, well, if you don't know, Texas, football is like a religion. It's really, really big. Friday Night Lights is a thing. I have some of my greatest memories watching some of my friends compete on the football field. But those guys are men, man. Like those are some really big young men down there. So when you're growing up, I'm not the smallest guy, but there were guys that would tower over me and would outweigh me by hundreds of pounds, literally. So I figured out quickly that football wasn't my thing. Plus, my dad, to be honest, was like, "Hey, it's not what we do. I would hate you to get injured. So let's kind of steer another direction." So I tried my hand at track. Again, I kind of got laughed off the track, but again, at the time I didn't realize I was running with guys who would eventually go on to compete, in the Olympics in some cases. So yeah, I tried other things, but ultimately, my passion has always lied with basketball. So that's where I stuck.
Well, it's funny. You said that with going to football, a lot of them were a lot bigger than you, but I did my research. Reg, going into your freshman year, you were listed at 6'4", $185. So that's not small.
Yeah. I wasn't small, but it's really hard to really articulate the size and speed. I mean, to be honest with you, I've played, I've been fortunate enough to play everywhere on every level except for the NBA, really. And still some of the best athletes I've ever seen were from literally in my high school in Texas and in my little section of the city in Texas. So I can't really, get across just how athletic some of these kids are. And so when you're 13, 14, 15 years old, you're like, yo, I don't know if that's for me. And, again, I think to have success in anything, you should have a passion for it. It's much easier to give your all to something that you are really committed to. And, football is just not my sport. It's not what I like to do. I don't really understand the idea of bulking up and becoming as fast and strong as possible to just smash into each other. So no disrespect. Again, I have tons of friends who played in NFL, currently play, but not my cup of tea.
So you focused on basketball, and I think you said around 8th, 9th grade when we spoke earlier. So now you're busting your butt and you're killing it down in Texas. I looked at your stats senior year, 19, 6 and 4, pretty good. Got you on the radar to get recruited. So you decided on Western Michigan, the Mustangs, right?
Yeah, Broncos actually. Yeah,
Broncos.
Great day to be a Bronco. Yeah, it's funny. My process was, it was a little strange. I was again in a situation where my father, he played a little bit in college, and he's from a different era, so the idea of AAU and stuff like that, we didn't really understand. You just, in his era, you played in your high school, and college coaches found you. So I was right on the cusp of that AAU scene. So for the first couple of years of my high school career, I didn't even play varsity, for one, and I wasn't highly recruited at all. It wasn't really until I, was fortunate enough to play on my AAU team that literally, I went from overnight being initially being like offered some junior college stuff and some low D1 stuff to overnight, I had tons of offers from pretty much every school in Texas. And originally I had committed to Rutgers University because I had always wanted to play in the Big East and all this stuff. So the coaching staff got fired that spring that I was set to go that fall. And so that opened my recruitment back up. And I was being recruited by University of Houston, University of Miami, and then literally out of nowhere, Western Michigan showed up. And my head coach at the time was a guy by the name of Robert McCullum, who had just gotten a job, and him and the coach in Miami, Leonard Hamilton, were really tight. And Leonard kind of put him on my trail. He said he was looking for a guard that could kind of do, handle the ball, shoot the ball. And Leonard Hamilton put him on me. They were offering another kid, and if he didn't take the scholarship, that was my scholarship. And so Leonard put him in touch with my family, and before you knew it, I was flying up to Kalamazoo to take a visit with my father, and the rest is kind of history. I appreciated the way they treated me. I loved the campus. It was good size. I thought there was a lot of promise, and just kind of out of nowhere, I found myself, committing to the idea of going to school in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
So with that, now going back to high school before we jump back to Western Michigan, you were a first team all academic. So did the education part play a big role in the school you chose as well?
Yeah, it did to a degree. I mean, to be honest, I would never do anything over because that experience has made me who I am. But we didn't know. I was the first guy in my family to be recruited at that level since the 60s, 70s. So like we didn't really know. So education did have it definitely. My parents are educators. It was Western has we have one of the top aviation programs in the country, but great business school. But for me, it was just, I felt like I had a real opportunity at the time. The MAC was producing pros, and, guys like Wally Zerbiak and Antonio Daniels were coming out of the MAC, and a few other guys I'm not sure you guys will remember. But, for me, I was like, I can go to this school, probably put in my 4 years. Again, this is antiquated way of thinking, right? Just the one and done and stuff like that. But go put my work in, and hopefully by the time I'm a senior, I'll have a shot. And that's really what sold my family and I on the experience, was the coaching staff and the athletic director. Like that was kind of the goal. The goal was to, figure out a way to create a path for me to get to the NBA. So that was really all I was focused on. And so, I want to say, the educational part was like a big deal, and it was, but, ultimately I was looking to be in the best spot for basketball.
So each year you got more playing time, you got a little bit better, the numbers increased to the point where, as I mentioned, you were the sixth man of the year in the MAC. Were there any other team or individual accolades that you are really proud of during your collegiate career?
I'm proud of I was defensive player of the year. We decide those awards, in the team. I came in second in the conference in voting, though, to Chris Kaman, who ended up being a pro for a number of years and an all-star. We had the best record in school history, still stands till today. So we're kind of, locked in a bit of, a little famous over there. We got our little plaques up and our stuff up. So it was a good experience. I mean, I learned a lot. You know, it was tough, to be honest. I started my first year. I mean, I started my freshman year. Like I literally, my second game of my entire college career, I found myself playing against Michigan. You know, we got smacked, but I had 16. You know, so it's starting off in that fashion. You know, you don't expect by your time you're a senior to come off the bench, but our team was really good, and that's what the team needed me to do. To be honest, I mean, it really was the best thing for the team. So I bit the bullet. I'll be honest, I wasn't really excited about doing it, but I did it, and thank God I did, because you know we had a really successful year, and you know I got the sixth man of the year, so it was pretty cool.
What's great about talking about transitions, this podcast, is there's more than just one transition as opposed to leaving college or leaving sport, but there's the transition within sport, as you mentioned. So it was a little tough for you to move from starting to the bench. What, I know you said you weren't happy. What kind of thoughts were going through your head? Obviously, it turned out for the best, but
Right.
where were you at?
I mean, look, I'll just be very transparent. You know, my college experience wasn't what I wanted it to be for those first 3 years. At one point I considered transferring. You know, I just wasn't really working the way I thought it should. I wasn't really getting the commitment from the coaching. Well, I'd say the head coach, because he's the one that makes the decision, that I anticipated. You know, so it was just kind of like, you know, you do all this work. My senior year, we got a new coach, which was just our assistant. He had just kind of been elevated. You go to bat for this guy. You go into the athletic director and you say, this is who we want and all that. And then he turns around and comes to me and says, hey, Reg, I need you to come off the bench. You know, it's like, you know, I definitely, I took it personally. But again, you know, I'm a 21-year-old kid at the time. And, you know, you're worried about the perception versus the results. You know, I'm sitting on the bench and I got my girlfriend and, you know, all the stuff, you know, it's like, I look like a loser. But as it turns out, you know, I'm closing every game, you know, my minutes were fine. And I wouldn't have, honestly, the way our team played, you know, we had some really good basketball players, and I probably wouldn't have gotten any accolades had I started, you know. So it was cool to be recognized for, you know, how I contributed to the team. But I think more importantly for me, it was good for me from a mental standpoint to kind of feel like, all right, well, you accomplished something, you know, like it wasn't all a waste, you know.
Right.
So yeah, it was tough, but you know, it's part of the game. It's a growing experience, a learning experience as well, and you know, something I cherish now. You know, it's super cool. I was literally talking to a kid we're recruiting 2 nights ago, and he was like, "Yo, my goal is to be sixth man of the year," and I was like, "Wow, that's crazy." I did that, you know, so I know where you're at, and I can appreciate that you even have that as a goal, because it certainly wasn't my goal. I didn't even think about it. I just played basketball, you know.
It takes a different mindset to really want to do that. A very much, you know, teamwork and putting the team first.
Right.
So you mentioned you made every level except MBA. So we're going to talk about leaving Western Michigan now. So tell us a little bit about that transition of leaving college. Where did you go? What happened?
Yeah, so I'm in I have a unique set of circumstances. You know, my relationships, for whatever reason, God just kind of blessed me. I knew a lot of different people. Like I said, some of the guys I grew up with who were still family to me. You know, they were really good at their respective industries and sports. And so a buddy of mine, the day I graduated college, was drafted into the NFL. And so for me, I always was like, you know, go big or go home kind of guy. Like, I knew I wasn't going to play in the NBA, unfortunately, and nobody prepared me or really talked to me about options after basketball, you know? So I kind of created my own lane. You know, I figured out early on in college, I wasn't a 9 to 5 kind of guy. You know, I wasn't a go sit in the cubicle, have lunch at 12 kind of guy. But I didn't know what that looked like. So, you know, I initially started a marketing management company with some buddies. And the idea was to manage, you know, my friend who had got drafted and do some marketing stuff based around that. And, you know, just kind of grow the company and figure it out, you know, because I knew that I wanted to be involved in sports at the highest level. And if I couldn't compete, I had to figure out a way in which I could be a value add. And so to me, that was kind of my initial foray into, you know, ultimately what I ended up doing. But, you know, it didn't work out. We had a lot of bumps in the road. Besides having no idea what we were doing, some things just didn't go the way they were planned. So ultimately, I found myself, with that itch to still play basketball. I mean, a lot of my buddies were playing. Some had gone overseas, and some had seen, different levels of success doing it. And so for me, I was just like, well, I didn't initially, focus on trying to be a basketball player after school, but it looks promising, and it's honestly something that I dearly miss. So I started to hone in on, what that might look like. And fortunately for me, it's that now that I'm in the business, I know this is like a rarity. Even after taking about a year and a half off from playing like actual competitive basketball, I was able to, figure out a way to get overseas. So yeah, that was the mini transition from basketball to no basketball, right back to basketball. It was interesting.
So there was a lot that you said there that I want to unpack. One of which you mentioned that you didn't really have a guide to lead you on where you want to go, whether it's to be a professional basketball player or to go into, the real world of getting a job outside of sports.
Right.
Tell me a little bit more about that. What more could have been done to help you prepare for life after college?
Well, I think there could have been more discussion. I think if I was a coach, let's just say, I think I would sit down with my seniors. First of all, let me I think initially when my kids got to school, I would start to explain to them the importance of building a network, of starting to figure out what some of your passions are besides basketball, and not in a way that's like, not shooting every kid's dream down, but just in general, the ball doesn't bounce forever. And you hear that a lot when you're growing up, but until it becomes a reality, you don't really understand it. So, my dad, again, huge influence, one of the greatest guys I've ever known. But even still, he's from a different era. He didn't play at the level I played, so his idea was like, all right, you finish school, get a resume going and find a job. And for me, I'm a passion. I'm led by, passion. Like I'm led by, I have an artistic type of way that I live my life. So if I'm not in it, I can't pretend, So I was like, desperately trying to figure out what to do because, again, I just felt so stifled with even the idea of I'm gonna go, into Xerox and just, manage the Xerox all day or whatever. I'm gonna go to a Staples and whatever it may be. It's just like to me, you might as well have said, I'm gonna cut your legs off and you never play basketball again. It's the equivalent. Like this is terrible. So I think it would be beneficial to have people involved in in the lives of the players that help them figure out some things outside of basketball that they're interested in and help them figure out what it looks like to get involved in those things. And again, I'm big on the network. Like, I had no idea how much the alumni and the donors and stuff like that, like those guys they loved me, and I reciprocated, but I never really took the time to build a relationship in a fashion that made sense in terms of like, once I'm done with basketball, would you guys mind mentoring me? Or once I'm done with basketball, do you have any opportunities or stuff like that? And I do think that, that was a failure on the program's part, because we're kids, and again, no shots. I love all my people, but it is what it is. It's just, there's no direction, and you can't expect guys who have committed their all in their lives to a certain thing to all of a sudden understand how it works on the other side. It's just not realistic, So yeah, I really do think there needs to be some way to educate guys and empower guys. And I think that I would have I wouldn't have been running around like a chicken with his head cut off had I had more guidance in that area.
Right.
But it is what it is. I'm here now, so no complaints.
And such an interesting story, Reggie, because you played high level college competition and then you transitioned out of sport and then, you still had the fire. And as you mentioned, it's not how it works for everybody. And you were very lucky. You had a quick stint in the IBL and then you went overseas for a year and a half. So you come back from Germany and you're now transitioned out of competitive basketball, competitive sports.
Right.
Now you're still, obviously you and I know each other well. So, you're playing in pro-ams and you're playing high level basketball at different rec centers. When did that full transition of, I'm leaving the sport really take a hold of you? When did it actually register that my career is done and I need to figure out what's the next step?
I think when I made the conscious decision to quote unquote retire, I got offers to go play again. But I just, overseas is a grind. It's like, people don't understand these kids. They're like, oh, if I don't make the NBA, I'll just go overseas. Like, that's not how it works. Like, there are really good, like, I played some of the toughest competition in my life in a random gym in Germany on like a winter night, like that nobody would know of. And like, it's not an easy thing to do. And the expectations are high for one, and the opportunities aren't just in abundance like that. So, so I think that, I'm not sure that the fire ever, goes away. You know what I mean? Like I just kind of had to decide that, hey, I don't want to spend my life, chasing. It sucks though, because I love basketball, but chasing the idea of like, I'm going to level up and eventually I'll maybe play in Spain. And then, and look, the money can be great, of course. And the lifestyle is awesome, I'm very blessed to have seen, a lot of the world and have these different experiences. But, I know friends, my high school roommate, college point guard and best friend in the world, played for 13, 14 years, I believe. And he's just now kind of retiring and getting back into the swing of things. And, we're close to 40, my man. You know what I mean? Like, and it's no knock, but I didn't want to have a family. I knew I was always wanting to have a family and stuff like that. And I just didn't want to be that guy, like having my family fly all around the world and I'm trying to live out a dream. And then at some point it ends either by injury or just by, your numbers aren't good enough. And then what? Then I'm looking to be a coach, maybe, something like that. And so I just figured that, again, I think the catalyst was me starting the management marketing group initially. I figured that there was more room, to run with that. And I feel like I could have a bigger impact in the culture and in the space if I was, a guy in that realm, helping guys navigate their process and helping guys really flesh out and utilize, their platforms, to take advantage of these opportunities. So that's what I chose to do, man. That was it was hard to do, but I did it,
So what kind of adjustments did you have to make once you decided that it was done? Because obviously you mentioned that, you could, chase it, you can try to start something new. I know you mentioned you wanted to start a family. What was the biggest transition that impacted you once you decided to leave?
I'd say the the real world component, if that makes any sense. Like, I could no longer hide behind the idea that I was a basketball player, that was my identity. I had to do something else. In these conversations I was having, I had to be somebody else. I had to, figure out what that looked like, what that felt like, and embrace it, and it's tough. I mean, I don't want to say it's tough, man. I'll be honest with you. I think a lot of this stuff is overblown. Like, people can do jobs, you just got to give people the opportunity. You don't have to study for 1,000 years to be, a professional in something, in my estimation, at least not for everybody. But again, when you're a guy that's only really played basketball, never really worked a job, and you're now, telling people that you are running a brand management company or whatever, why? What's your why? How are you going to be effective? How can you, do something that you've not been, groomed to do, so to speak. But, I'm a big believer in life experiences teach you a lot. And again, having the passion to want to pursue something, to me, kind of outweighs the quote unquote educational piece that others might have.
So you made a mention that a lot of your college teammates, they're just now starting to retire. When you made the decision to retire, did you see any changes in family and friends and in your network that really started to pop up once you decided you were done?
No, I mean, again, I try to keep a small circle that are people that are reliable, and it's grown as I've gotten older, but my core stays the same, and it, if you know me well enough, you kind of know like I'm supposed to be doing certain stuff, like it was no surprise to anybody when I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go try and manage Will Smith or whatever, like whatever, like they're like, oh, that makes sense for you. So, so everybody was supportive, thankfully. There were definitely some really, really, really dark days, hard days. And you always got to fight with the whispers, like, why doesn't he just do this? Why don't he, why don't you just go to that? It's tough, but ultimately, I try to keep nothing but positive people around me anyway. And they, again, the people that know me, they know me, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. So, so in that respect, people have been supportive, and I didn't have a big entourage of people that were like only around me because I played basketball. I wasn't that good, so it was cool.
Did you feel that you lacked any skills when you were transitioning into this new role?
Yeah. I mean, well, it depends, because again, I always set out to do for self. So I don't know that you can lack anything if you're doing for your own, doing it for yourself. But yeah, the resume, like any of that stuff, I mean, I had to apply for certain stuff. I tried, my hand at certain things that never, amounted to much. But yeah, my wife, I mean, well, she was my girl at the time. I mean, she would absolutely. I'd be like, hey, I need a resume. Can you do it? Like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. My thing was like, yeah, I worked at a box company and in sophomore year in college. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. So, just basic skills like that. I'm trying to think. I mean, other than that, I lived alone in Europe. I learned how to drive stick on the Autobahn. Like, there's certain, what I mean? Like, I can't, it wasn't that tough to transition, if that makes any sense. But there were definitely some skills that I was like super green. Like, I just didn't know where to even begin,
So there's three phases when it comes to the transition aspect. There's the separation, which is when you're saying goodbye and you're moving on from sport. There's the liminal phase, which is when you're kind of stuck between the old athlete and the desire. Well, what you said, the desire never quits, but you're stuck between the desire to keep pushing and developing the new you. And then there's the reincorporation phase, where you're adapting to that new lifestyle and you have your identity after sport. And you mentioned, everybody knew me as Reggie, the basketball player, and now you're a different person. Between those three phases, which was the hardest for you to really fight through? The separation, the liminal, or the reincorporation?
I'd say the reincorporation, because I felt like I got a chance to kind of, even though I wasn't a basketball player, I literally played every day. I got the competition itch out that way, and I got the camaraderie itch out that way. I think, again, just kind of really embracing the idea that, like, even now I'm old and it almost sucks to be like to hear guys talk about, oh, I'm about to go play, and I'm just like, damn, like that's so I think really kind of accepting that it's over, like that enough with the I used to play here stuff, like just like let's figure out a new narrative. Let's build an identity around some other stuff. I think initially that was kind of tough. But again, I've been fortunate, I've been able to do some really cool high level things. And like, so, when I start to tell my story, sometimes that even outshines the basketball portion, so it's like, I've been blessed, I'm thankful that I haven't had like a really hard time adjusting to, life without basketball,
Right. So we got one final part because we're just up against it. So we call this the paying it forward part. So, you're providing an opportunity to meet with a group of college student athletes. And I know you do that in the real world anyway. So this is kind of right up your alley. So, they're in their senior year of eligibility. How would you help them with a couple of things? What vital piece of advice do you want to share with them about your transition and your experience and how your sport career ended?
Again, I'm huge on the network. I'm huge on this. Is a I say this all the time, and if you know where it's from, good for you. Hit them while you got the muscle. When you are an athlete at that level, even to today, I get texts, I get Facebook messages, I get random videos. People tag me in like, man, I was at this game. I'll never forget. You never know the influence that you're having on somebody, and so you want to make sure that you really dig into the network that is around of people that support you for who you are. Let's be real. I mean, you're a basketball player or college athlete at a certain level, and develop those relationships with good people. And don't be afraid, to be passionate about other things other than your sport. It's not crazy. I mean, those things, will ultimately be some things, hopefully, that you'll be able to pursue and flesh out, once you transition out. So for me, it's just like really, understand that, take the time and use the time wisely to develop a good network while you're at school. Start to think about things that move you outside of the sport, and start to think of what life looks like when it's over, and start to really embrace that that's going to happen, and pour into those people that are currently pouring into you, because this is a relationship built world. You can work hard all you want, you can grind all you want, but if you don't know a certain person at a certain time, it may not work out for you. So make sure that you lock in on those things and then enjoy yourself, and handle your business, and you should be all right.
I got one final question, Reg. If you could do it all over again, would you follow the exact same path?
I think I would, because again, the people I've gotten a chance to know, and if I didn't go to Western Michigan University, it would not have happened specifically, and so I'll be super transparent. I prayed that my senior year would be a great one. I didn't know how it would happen, but I just prayed for it, and it didn't look anything like I thought it would, but it ended up being better than I could have ever imagined. So I really can't complain. I'm thankful. It's not the biggest school in the world, but but I'm well respected and well connected there, and that's all I can ask for. So I'm appreciative. I wouldn't change a thing.
Reg, you're the best. Thank you so much. On behalf
You're
of
the best,
Austin, I want to thank you all for listening. And remember, as always, progress isn't possible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. So until next time, thanks for listening.